we're streaming live, so again, keep it clean. We've got a couple seats down front here, but I guess everybody's okay. I'm going to jump right into this, but before I do a little housekeeping, welcome to 2025. I hope your seatbelts are tight. It might be a bumpy road. Let's see. Today we're going to have the Agricultural Commission, correct, talk about some stuff, and I'm going to let them tee up what some stuff is, and then Mike Fortini from NDCAP, who was here once before, give us an update on how we're doing with decommissioning the plant, or not decommissioning. I don't know. You'll fill in the blanks. Let's see, in March, I think we're going to have, early March, the preliminary draft of the environmental impact report from the Citizens Advisory. That's right, yeah. For the wastewater treatment is going to be out. We're going to have some folks here come and present what that's all about. And I'm sure there's other stuff. Patty, was there other stuff that I left out?
No, just the usual town stuff.
Yeah, the usual town stuff.
Pick and choose.
Yeah, I did notice in the newsletter we asked people to forward it to friends, and we saw all kinds of people sign up. So the intent of this group is exactly what we're doing here. Socializing, looking at each other face to face, what a concept. I prefer to sit in my basement and just play on a computer, but every now and then I come out. So that's what we're doing. Raising issues that we think may or may not impact both Chiltonville and Plymouth. And with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca. I'm hoping this will be interactive, but if it's not, that's fine too. If we ask questions, we're going to ask that we repeat the questions so that we get this, so people can understand what the answer is who might be watching it later. And with that, I think I'm going to sit down. Stand here.
So my name is Rebecca Nutter, and I own Sunnybrook Menagerie in Cedarville. It's an educational animal encounter farm for kids. So it's in the Montessori style of teaching, and I do programming for kids of all ages, and I visit retirement homes with the animals and do all sorts of farm tours and things like that. I became a member in October of the Agricultural Commission and became chair. And I have a couple other members here as well. So Bruce Howard, Rich Vaca.
Hi, everybody.
And Lori. Hiding in the back.
Rebecca, why don't you tell us a little bit about the animals that you keep?
Okay, so we have 24 animals on our property. Most of them are rescues. Our largest is a mini Highland cow named Nestle. All of which the kids interact with. We have the cow, we have 5 goats, 3 ducks, 5 guinea pigs, 2 ferrets, a bearded dragon, Herman's tortoise, a mini pig, a dog, and a cat. I think that's all. I know, right? We should get a partridge. But yeah, we promote rescue and all that as well. But mostly just animal husbandry and mindfulness, and all that teaches you when you get a kid with an animal, and all the beautiful things that come out of that. So I joined the Agricultural Commission when I heard about some regulations that may impede my business. And what the Agricultural Commission has been working on is actually not involving adding more regulations. And maybe Rich Vaca can just give us a little kind of timeline of how this all came to be.
Certainly, Rebecca. Hi, everybody. Those of you that don't know me, my name is Rich Vaca. I'm the Conservation and Agricultural Planner town. About maybe about a year and a half ago now, the health department came to Patrick Farah and myself. Concern of complaints that will come regarding agriculture, regarding in particular. So asked us if we lend anything that we could come up with. So they were working in parallel with us on a set of regulations that were modeled after East Ham's regulations regarding non-commercial livestock. Well, Patrick and Bruce Howard and myself started working on this, and I don't know, maybe I think it was probably pre-COVID. Bruce and I had come up with a concept, a la Mayflower Compact Agreement, and we were going to use that for conservation as an alternative to regulations, basically setting out a series of performance standards, common sense ways to do things around your wetlands, that if a homeowner signed on, then they would be relieved of the obligation of complying with our local wetlands regulations, because they would already be in compliance because they were doing, what they were supposed to do. So we took the same concept and we applied it to livestock. And what we came up with was basically a 15-point program, common sense things about how you operate your farm. And if you comply with those, then you are immune from nuisance suits by your neighbors. Because under our local right to farm bylaw, it says that everyone is expected to perform in accordance with good farming practices, but it's never defined. So we thought, let's define good farming practices, and if farmers will sign on, there's an agreement with the town. As long as you're doing that, then you're immune from your neighbor's complaints. Now, the other part of this too was that we wanted to also rescind any existing regulations that govern livestock here in town. So the health department would, like no roosters. There's another one where you're not allowed to walk your pig on the public roads or railroad right-of-ways. That we think should probably be rescinded, because Rebecca, you
I walk my pig.
Yeah, and nobody complains.
She's potty trained, by the way.
So we've been working with the health department. We put together this program. We call it the Plymouth Livestock Compact. We'd like to go through some of those points with you today, and we'd also like to solicit your opinions so that we can integrate it into this system. Rebecca and Bruce have been working, as I said, with the health department and the town manager, and they've granted us a year to put in this pilot program and see how it operates. So we're very interested to hear what you all have to say. Ready to answer questions that
I'll do the slides and Q&A, and we're going to actually ask for your feedback too. If you have an area of expertise, there's some sign-up sheets on the back table if you want to be a part of the module making for all the different species. We would love people's input. So this is just like a basic rundown of the Livestock Compact. So what is...
Before you jump in,
Yep.
you wanted to see any questions, everybody?
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah,
So, Mr. Baca, you and Mr. Farah are, can you explain, so you started this compact, not the Agricultural Commission? Is that correct?
Well, actually,
repeat the question?
Oh, yeah, can we repeat the question? Good.
Sure. This woman just asked if it was Patrick Farah and I who came up with this, or if it was the Agricultural Commission.
Yes.
Okay, so as we were working on this, I'm staff for the Agricultural Commission. So the Agricultural Commission is a 7-member commission appointed by the Board of Selectmen. I'm a town employee, and I work in the planning department. I work as a conservation planner, and about 2 years ago, my job description got expanded to also include agriculture. Just a little background about me. I have a background in marine biology and chemistry. I worked in the aquaculture field in Long Island Sound for NOAA. I've been an environmental consultant for the last 30-odd years. I'm also an attorney. And in 2016, Patrick and I got certified as urban farmers. The Urban Farm Institute in Baltimore. We've been working on a program called Civic Agriculture. And as part of that, we work with the Agricultural Commission, and this compact is part and parcel of that. So yes, with the authors, but we're working under the auspices of the AgCom.
But the Agricultural Commission, just to be clear, is not this compact.
Well,
No,
this is Bruce.
Patrick and I, Patrick was a member of the commission, as was I, and I still am, working with Rich's staff. So we did come up with it as the Agriculture Commission. So its roots date back to conservation and the Conservation Commission, of which I was a member. This is now wholly owned by the Agriculture Commission.
Yep, and it's still evolving and developing and just getting better all the time.
When the agricultural committee originally, when I became commission, was first instituted, I was under the impression I was on the commission for when it was still a committee for 10, 12, or 15 years. The intent of it originally, and with the right to farm bylaw, was that the committee, the commission now, was there so that the Board of Health didn't need to be involved with nuisance complaints. That's what you all are supposed to be there for.
Yep, we'll get to
You're
that.
supposed to be, okay.
Yep,
Okay.
we're taking full reign back from Board of Health. So we'll get to that.
But yes, our job is to advocate for farmers, advocate for agriculture here in Plymouth, and our other job is to mediate complaints instead of having regulations, as long as we're all utilizing best farming practices. The other thing that we did too was that we also changed the designation for a farm from being a minimum of 5 acres to no limitations at all. So a farm can be now a backyard, a front yard, any place here in town.
Is there a revenue stipulation?
No.
Costs?
No, there's no requirement on income. Farming has been opened up under the new regulations, under the zoning regulations rather, to cover all properties. So we have the opportunity now to really diversify and do a lot more with less land.
I have 0.89 acres, so not as much as I would like. But for now, it'll do.
And
All right.
Richard, would you just explain who Patrick Farrar is? I mean, I know who he is, I'm on a committee with him, but a lot of people might not know he also works for the town and what his role is on the BLUEC and
That's
was
correct.
on the agriculture commission.
Yep, Patrick is he's one of the planners in our office. He's been with the town for, about 17 years now. He's worked in conservation, he's worked with open space, he was the energy officer here for a while. He was appointed to the Agricultural Commission about, maybe two years ago now. And Patrick works with me in my office. So he and I are somewhat of a team. But Patrick is very well versed. He and his wife Janine have 8 chickens, great eggs, and he's nice enough to share with us. So yeah, he's a real asset here to the town. Thanks for asking.
All right.
So the compact is a voluntary agreement to manage family and small commercial farms using best farming practices in lieu of implementing additional regulations. So I'm going to take you through these bullet points really quick. We won't go through every slide. This will be on our website hopefully next Wednesday. So farming with the compact means the compact is an agreement between the Town of Plymouth and individual farmers. The farmer will agree to prepare, sign, and farm in accordance with the compact. The farmer will agree to use best farming practices and operate their farms in an ethical, humane, and nurturing manner. The farmer agrees to comply with the 15 stated compact requirements. As long as the farmer is conducting their operation according to the compact, they are immune to any future nuisance complaints. Any farmer who chooses not to participate is free to do so, but they are open to nuisance complaints. So just going back to Chapter 63, Sections 1 and 2, just right to farm. Plymouth is a right to farm. We're working on getting some more signage for that as well. We want to promote agricultural-based economic opportunities, protect farms in the Town of Plymouth by allowing agricultural uses and related activities to function in minimal conflict with abutters and town agencies. The bylaw shall apply to all jurisdictional areas within the town. 63-3, the Right to Farm Declaration, just wanting to make sure everybody is aware of it. If you haven't read up on it in a while, just reread it. It really is an asset to all of us that have livestock, and farms in general. Future disputes will be handled by the Agricultural Commission. So the Board of Health is no longer going to be taking any of the disputes or complaints. We are actually going to be implementing a procedure to mediate between the farmer and the complainant, whoever it may be.
Rebecca,
Yep.
can you go back a
Yep.
little bit here? So I just wanted to point out that right in the middle of this is probably the most important aspect of the Right to Farm bylaw, which says that farmers, that farming activities may include, and neighbors should expect that they may be subject to noise, odors, dust, and fumes associated with normally accepted agricultural practices. So this is really important because if it exceeds what is considered normal farming operations, that's when we get into the potential for nuisance complaints. Thank you, Rebecca.
Yep. So nuisance factors can be noise, smell, containment, or pollution. I'm just going to kind of bypass that to get to the 15 compact requirements. So with a spreadsheet, which I'll show you on the next slide, it's actually great bookkeeping for the farm. To have all your farm contacts and emergency numbers, sufficient housing and yard space for each animal. These are all things that you would sort of submit information on. Cleaning housing and yard conditions, proper livestock containment, predator and rodent deterrence, daily food and fresh water scheduling and feeding, proper food storage, proper waste handling and disposal, noise mitigation efforts, proper health management, regular health checks, vaccination schedule and administration, appropriate biosecurity, isolation and quarantine procedures, safe and healthy livestock transportation, end of life consideration for livestock, record keeping, community involvement, neighborhood and community outreach, compact initial signing and renewal. So if you wanted to use our Excel sheet, we have all of the tabs needed for you to document everything that would be required for the bookkeeping, the record keeping aspect of this. So this is Patrick's. So you can kind of see like how he set it up, color coded it, and then would put the information on the right hand side. I actually would love, I'm going to be using this template myself to keep track, because when you get a lot of animals needing vet visits and when did this one get this vaccine and that one, and having all the dates, it would be nice to have a home base for all that information. And here's how you would become, how you would implement the compact. So you would first, you would read it, confirm current livestock operations, and comply with the requirements. Tracking, and then the AgCom would come out, do a farm visit, address any questions you might have, arrange and conduct the compact sign-off, and then share the compact with farm staff, service providers like veterinarians, optionally neighbors. Everyone in my neighborhood, I walk all the animals, they're all leash trained, so even the cow walks around the neighborhood, so everyone's quite aware of what I have in my backyard. And once again, these are, if you're doing the basic like care for your animals, if you're doing the right thing, this isn't going to affect anything. It's you're already doing it. It's just to help people that might not know what the better choices to help care for their animals might be. So this is sort of what Rich was talking about, the development of the compact. So we kind of skip over that. We have many drafts of the compact that have circulated through. Things can definitely be updated, and we want to work with the community on developing a really rounded out document that everyone feels comfortable with and wants to use. Here is that the dispute resolution process that we talked about. So when a complaint comes in, it will now come to the Agricultural Commission. Rich and a member, we're going to be on a rotation, will take over the mediation process for that complaint. We have a whole protocol that we go through to try to get a compromise established between the two parties. A site visit is conducted with Rich and a member of the AgCom, and adjustments are made, and the farmer agrees to join the compact. That's the best case scenario, and it all works out. If not, if the dispute is not resolved, it will move on to non-criminal disposition and just go down that track. But we're hoping with the compact to avoid that even happening in the first place. So, yes.
Okay, I'm not part of the group. I'm from the Ellisville Cedarville area. I do have a question for this.
Sure.
So how does one get to the compact? Would you go ahead, or do you wait for there's a complaint and then become part of the compact?
So we're actually getting it up on the webpage, hopefully Wednesday, and we would much rather just love volunteers to register before anything even needed to happen. Another expedition that we have is, unfortunately, the avian flu is kind of upticking, and so if we could have the people in our community with avian species signing up for this compact, then we can get a registry of who has what, and we can help get safety information out to those folks ahead of. Yes, definitely.
Great. So we're introducing the compact now. So the purpose of us meeting is to get feedback on the compact. There are several documents that we've drafted that explain in much more detail what the compact is. It's a module that we've done specific. We've got another one module. We've started work with goats, and we're going to over time produce modules for different types of livestock that are currently kept in town, and that will include cows, sheep, pigs, and other types of birds.
And horses
So
have
geese.
their own bylaws, so horses are exempt from this.
So the idea is that we want farmers to sign up in advance, that they'll start following the compact, that they'll take the steps that Rebecca walked through to live the compact in their operations every day. And then you're immune from nuisance complaints. If you get a nuisance complaint without having signed up for the compact, you're wrong.
But you
So
always have the
we want you to sign up first and show us that you are farming according to the compact. Then you're immune from future nuisance complaints.
So we have the signups on the back table. If you have like an area of expertise, if you have sheep, I don't have sheep. I would love to pick your brain and make sure the module is like spot on. So there's sign-up sheets on the back so we can take your information and reach out to you when we get to that module so we have your input. So any other questions? Yeah.
So just a reminder, if you can repeat the question, just so everybody can hear.
Right, thank you.
My question is, on the website, will there be recommendations for rat containment?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I
won't
there
ask you
are-
to go through it now, but
There
it'll
are
be on the
specific
website.
there are specific discussions of dealing with rodents and mitigating rodent populations.
Okay.
And those include maintaining your feed in sealed containers and dealing with waste on a timely basis.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I just have a question. So if you sign up for this and then you say you share it with like the neighbors and other people, what if one of those neighbors says, I don't want this? Does that have any weight, or you're already in the compact?
I would say that so if your neighbor,
Once
if
you
you
share your
share your information with a neighbor and they are not in favor of it, it would be up to them to make an actual complaint, and then we would go through the
And then
process.
come back
We
to you.
want neighbors to know that Plymouth is a right to farm community.
That's what I was going to say.
And that is part of our bylaws in town, and they should read the right to farm bylaws so that they understand what what is in force in this community. If they don't like it, then I would suggest they speak to their town meeting members. But this is the law now in town, has been for quite a while. What we're trying to do is to raise awareness of the right to farm and make sure that the farmers are following good farming practices, and that hopefully in doing so there won't be complaints about their farms.
And I would just add to that the right to farm bylaw basically stipulates that we have the right to farm here, and that there are going to be noises, and there's going to be smells, and there's going to be slow-moving vehicles on the road. And when you buy a piece of property here, you know that. And so just in and of itself, farming isn't a nuisance. The issue that we had with this was, what are good farming practices? Because that's not defined anywhere. So we did the research, through MDAR, through USDA, through other organizations, and tried to come up with a protocol that is good farming practice. And as Rebecca said, part of this is educational. Young people, homesteaders, anybody that's, wanting to do this has almost, a recipe book for how to do it. And then on the other hand, if there is a complaint, well, then the farmer has documentation to say, hey, you know what? We're doing this in the best manner that we can. And you as a neighbor, well, you live in a right to farm community, so.
Well, we want the farmer talking with the neighbors too.
Right.
And trying to resolve any concerns in a partnership manner. And I think that's important, that we recognize that farmers need to talk to their neighbors too.
Is beekeeping included?
It will be.
Okay.
The question
We haven't done a
was,
module yet, but
Yeah.
yes.
Beekeeping will be a module eventually. I'm actually setting up my first 2 hives this spring. I'm taking the beekeeping class. So.
So is your compact that you're putting together, is that basically your way of interpreting what good farming practices are?
From research.
essence, yes.
Yeah.
I would I would think that the opposition, the guy that's complaining, would use that as if you didn't, you're supposed to comply with that compact. If you forgot to keep, you read off a whole bunch of things, record keeping and bookkeeping of good health practices, vaccinations and all of that. If you were missing one of those, that gives that other person, the complainant, said, well, you didn't comply, so you're in bigger trouble than I am.
Well, actually, you know, Nate, one of our jobs is to advocate for the farmers. That's our job. We're not here to regulate farming. We're here to help the farmers to do what they do under the right to farm bylaw. So again, part of our job would be that mentoring and working with the farmer to make sure that, you know, all of these things get done. On the other hand, though, hey, everybody makes mistakes. And the nice part is that this isn't regulatory necessarily. You know, the first step in all of this is mediation. It's communication, it's finding compromise. Like Bruce said, it's working together with our neighbors. Because, you know, bottom line here, guys, is that we all got to eat. And, you know, as Mark said at the beginning, you know, the future is uncertain. And so we've got to, as a community, you know, we've got to take the steps necessary to make sure that we can all eat and that we've got good, healthy food that's locally produced. We know who our farmers are, and we all work together. So that's.
So before you ask your question, I just want to follow up. The expectation is that by signing up to the compact, that for the most part you're going to follow the terms of the compact, that you're going to comply with across the 15 dimensions of requirements. Yes, if you don't check all the boxes, it's probably going to be okay. But if you're not doing most of what it says in the compact, if you're not cleaning your manure on a regular basis, if your animals are running free and not contained, then you're not in compliance with the compact, and therefore you're not protective. So the expectation is that you're going to do most of what it says in the compact and follow good practices.
Most people already are.
Most people already are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, Rebecca,
Yep.
we did have a question.
What was it again? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, one of them was, Right and Farm does assume some sort of, as you said, feeding yourself. But the reality is most of the animals under this probably aren't food animals. So there may need to be some changing in the wording so that we're including all livestock, because the reality of most of the livestock in Plymouth are not food animals. Or people get them thinking, oh, I'm going to turn these into food animals, and they're really cute.
So we do address show animals, but for the most part, you know, animals are animals, and they're going to do animal stuff. You may not be.
For why it's
you may not be. You may not be eating your chickens, you know, and they may come into the house every once in a while. But if they're primarily living outside, then we expect them to, you know, have a good life outside.
Because none of the animals on my farm are for food.
I guess I meant as far as justifying it to the public.
Right, and
Right.
for therapeutic purposes too, education,
there's a lot of
all
other
of
reasons
those.
that we
Yeah,
have.
yeah. So no, I agree with that. Yeah.
So just to be clear, service animals that are kept inside are exempt from the space requirements, but other aspects of the compact do apply to service animals.
So we've got somebody watching online there, we've got a question that says, what is biosecurity?
That's diseases, right?
Yeah, making sure that
Disease prevention.
you prevent diseases, that you're, you know, wash your feet before you go into the pen, that, you know, you're making sure that, that everything is clean and healthy.
And if you have a new animal coming in, that you quarantine them at first to protect the rest of whatever species you have. just to keep
So,
that.
so I would encourage you to read the compact. There is a section on biosecurity, and it goes into more depth on that topic.
So is there
One of them was about, you keep talking about complaints. So is that specifically nuisance complaints, or does it also include complaints regarding humane animal management?
So let's
It-
repeat the
both.
question.
Let's
The
repeat that
question
question.
is,
Yes.
So the requirements,
The question,
Oh,
Yeah.
repeat the question.
The question was, do complaints also address care of the animals as well as
Yes. So
nuisance of smell and odor and stuff?
nuisance to people or a problem to the animals.
right.
Problems with so it does. The compact does require the humane treatment of animals. So if the animals are not being treated humanely, if they're being kept in spaces that are too small, restrictively small, that's not permitted. There are minimum space requirements in the compact. There is requirements for immunization. So those are all expected as part of the good farming practices.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess it was more about complaints coming in. So do you also handle that set of complaints that usually goes through animal control, in my experience, regarding, when somebody calls in and says, my sheep are standing out in the rain, who gets that call?
Well, to start with, I probably will.
Okay.
All right, and then from there, we'll work it through the comp. Is the farmer a member of the compact? Are they a signatory to it? If not, then we have that conversation. But I know I've heard this a lot about people calling in complaining that the horses are out in the rain, or that people that aren't familiar with agriculture get concerned about it.
And
but
actually, that point came up on the commission's. As long as you have shelter provided for the horses can get in out of the rain. It's their choice whether they're out in the rain or not. It's not a requirement that you bring your horses in every time it rains. As long as you're providing the shelter that they need, then you are in compliance with the compact.
And the other side of it too is that, again, we're working as advocates for the farmer. So when we have that first conversation with the complainant, here's an opportunity for a teaching moment. And we have that ability to explain what we're doing, how we do it, why we do it. And hopefully, that individual will be more enlightened at the end and will not have any need for any further confrontation.
My other question was, you keep saying if somebody is not part of this compact and then there's a complaint, then what?
Well, then we would.
Who's next?
Well, we would handle it again as a mediation. Someone complains about something, we'll go through the same process of getting the parties together, collecting the information, having that conversation, seeing if we can find some resolution. If that farmer isn't a member, then they're not part of the compact, so they don't have the documentation of utilizing good farming practices to be used as evidence to say they're immune from any nuisance complaint. If we can get the parties to agree and settle it, then we will, regardless of whether you're part of the compact or not. And then, if we can't find resolution, then the health department will move forward with their normal nuisance
Okay, so it's the
procedure.
health department next.
Correct.
So let's have one more question, then we'll shift gears to Mike, and I want to give you guys some time to close.
I was wondering if there's a distinction made or constraint on renters. maybe short-term renters who have livestock in some manner, urban, maybe more centrally located to interior town dwellings.
It's a good.
No restrictions. I mean, if
They can join.
I
the
was
compact.
renting to someone, I would want them to sign up for the compact, so that you, as a rentor, you're aware that they're agreeing to farm following the compact best farming practices.
So, so closing, what do you need folks to do?
So we're going to be putting all the documentation up on the website really soon. I'm working with the communications director of the town, and we're hoping to possibly kind of liven up our Facebook page for comments, questions, discussions, putting all the documents on there as well. And we have the sign-up sheets in the back for specific modules if you guys have any area expertise that you could lend your knowledge to us. That would be a huge help.
If I could interject, it's very important that we have more help. It's only a 7-member commission. None of us have the expertise, and I'll pick on Scotty because she only worked for me years ago. She has the expertise in sheep that I do not have, or anybody else does on the commission. Sorry, you win it because you okay. There are other people here that may have other expertise, and we need that help to help draft a compact that makes sense and actually does help people that want to get into it. And that's kind of what we're trying to do. We're trying to preclude a situation where in some towns they have health departments that have put in regulations that don't make a whole lot of sense and are negative to the farming community. And by doing this, we're trying to avoid that. But do understand, we still have to intersect with the health department because anytime you have a situation, I'll use an example, if there's a disease that is transferable from a farm animal to a human, therefore the health department will have some say in it. If that disease is only transferable to other farm animals, they're out of it. They have no right being in it, and this is where our expertise should be ahead of the curve. Secondary, we talked about, there was a question about mistreatment of animals or something like that. Understand by state bylaws, a lot of that gets referred out and goes to either animal control or MSPCA, and they would supersede anything that we would have to say about it. But naturally, we'd be encouraging that kind of behavior that it should never have gotten to that. So do understand that as an agricultural commission, it still does have to interact with other bodies. And we do want to move faster than what we've been doing because whether we like it or not, we all here read the news. We know that avian flu is coming. There'll be regulations coming down. If we can get ahead of that, if this agricultural commission gets established, it'll be a lot easier for those people that we can try to get in information to people that have chickens, that have other farm animals. We have to remember we are at a flyway here, so it is coming. Which is a question of not, we just don't know when yet, but we do have to get a hold of this. And so the main thing from today is signing up if you have any expertise in any potential farm animal or farming activity. We'd love to know about it. Please sign up in the sign sheets at the back.
And the other thing that I would add too is please read the compact and comment. Let us know what you guys think. Room for improvement always. And we want to listen to all the voices and make sure that what we come up with represents who we are and how we do things here. So thank you all.
Thank you. All right, shift gears. We're going to have Mike talk about current state of affairs. And just so this whole decommissioning project discussion can get very kind of feisty. So let's recognize that Mike's volunteering on his own to talk about this, and let's keep it, social discourse is what we're doing.
So because I recognize some of you, but not all of you, I'll just take 1 second before we get into the whole tech part. So I'm an engineer by degree. I'm retired now, but I still am a registered professional engineer. And at the point of when I retired, I was actually the director of global nuclear operations for my company. So basically what I did for my whole working career was basically involved in the design, engineering, and plants. Except that unfortunately, many during Vietnam, I was a naval officer also for quite a while. But anyways, so just want to make sure that, so I'm on the NDCAP. I was appointed 2 years ago on the NDCAP by the state. But I'm not here NDCAP. And I'm not here promoting Holtec against them or for them. I'm just trying to give you what my assessment is based on my trips that I take to the site. In fact, I was there last week just to get an assessment again where they are. So, from a physical point, when you ride down Walkie Hill Road and you look over, and you look at where the site is, which is approximately 500 acres of industrial property, what you basically see there is a turbine building, which is a huge structure. You see another structure adjacent to it, which is basically the reactor building. And also you see an administration building. So as far as the main structures remaining on site, those are really the three main structures. Also what you see, also within there, of course, is an auxiliary building which is tucked in there, which is where the actual control building that controlled the plant was during operation. And they still use part of that control room because they still have to start and stop equipment used for the decommissioning process. But what you don't see is they also have built these coffers. I'll call them coffers or repositories, which there's probably several of them on the site. And they're built out of big concrete blocks, and they also have a concrete roof that's put on them. And what resides in those coffers is the B and C waste, which radioactive waste, which they still haven't shipped to the site. It's still being categorized, and afterwards they'll go there and they'll remove it by putting it into transfer desks, and then it'll be brought to a rail place and then shipped to basically, I think, Texas. So also what you see there is a switchyard. But that switchyard is just there basically so that it's owned by Holtec, but it's there so that Eversource, who leases it, can still maintain distribution, and that's what they use it for. So, time frame. When Holtec, so breakers were opened in 2019 when they ceased operation of the plant. So when Holtec basically at that point took over, was transferred the license from Entergy, along with the decommissioning trust fund, was transferred to Holtec. With the idea that, or with the plan, that nominally in 8 to 9 years they would basically have the plant decommissioned, and it would be back at a point of where it could have partial. So I think exactly to the date. But at that time, Holtec requested, based on legislation, that they would look for a year delay to the original date, which had been around 2017, if you added the 19 plus the... So, I'm sorry, 2027. I say 17. So what happened after that is, again, they had added for another extension. This was based on the water. The disposition of the processed water that resides at the plant, which at this point is a nominal 890,000 gallons of water, which are in various spots. So what that did is that actually delayed the big ticket items, which are basically demolition of the because because of the fact that you could not, there was no place to do, any place to put the water. So what is the meantime? So at this point, what Holtec has about 150, which 30 of them are actual Holtec employees. The rest of them are contractors. What they're doing is they're doing site characterization at this point, which is basically sampling soils, surface waters. They're doing monitoring wells to monitor the aquifer underneath, and also monitoring other structures which have been demolished to this point for any kind of radionuclides. There's also radiation monitoring going on at the site too. They do have radiation monitors. So what activities are going on in those buildings? So the turbine building, right now in the turbine building, even though it's not going to be demolished, because they're not going to start ripping down the turbine because that's a big ticket item, they actually are starting to decommission or actually segment pieces of equipment which will reside in there. In the turbine building you would have, the condenser, condensate pumps, circulating pumps, heaters, which they could actually start to do work on. Then it comes to the reactor building. So the reactor building obviously is where the water resides now. Most of the water still resides within the reactor building. Some of it's in the torus. The majority of the water resides in the spent fuel pool. There's probably 300,000 plus gallons in there. There's still some water, maybe 100,000 gallons in the reactor itself, and then there's some in the torus. So probably by the end of February, any water that remains in the reactor cavity right now, because they just finished actually segmenting the internals of the reactor, so they needed that cavity flooded in order for, to protect the workers, for actually shielding the workers. So that water will be, probably by the end of February, will be dumped out, will be released down into the torus. So the majority of the water remaining will be in the actual fuel pool itself, the spent fuel pool. Also, you hear them talk about the separator reheater pit. There's water that's put into that when they're actually doing refueling, because being a boiling water reactor, they have to take this plate off the top, which is basically this reheater separator, and they have to store it in there because it's radioactive during the fuel transfer. So now the fuel pool. So in the fuel pool right now, there's baskets of B and C waste, which is still being characterized. So at this point, what else are they doing in the reactor building? Well, so all the segmentation that was done internal to the reactor, because the reactor vessel's still there, that hasn't been segmented. But the internals...
Can I just interrupt, segmented segmentation?
Yeah, basically what they're doing is they're taking out all the fuel rods and fuel assemblies that have been out of there from the beginning. That was one of the first things they did, and put it up into the ISFIS, which stands for basically Independent Spent Fuel Storage Installation. When you look and you see on the top of that hill there, you'll see 63 casks up there. What's in those casks is the spent fuel, and 3 of the casks contain what they call greater than Class C waste. And greater than Class C waste, because of its radioactivity, cannot be shipped. So basically, those are stored in those 3 casks up there. There's no intent at this point to put any more solid waste up in those casks. In fact, the roadway up there has already been, they've already seeded over it and grassed over it.
So segmentation means just kind of...
Yeah, so what they've done is internals to the reactor, without boring everybody, things like jet pumps, the shrouding, any of the fuel, supports, the rod drives, all that stuff has been taken out. And that's actually been stored in these baskets that are now residing in the spent fuel, which are still being characterized. Eventually, those baskets will be taken out of there. That B and C waste will be put down into those storage facilities that I talked about outside, which are basically like these big jersey blocks in the roof on them, until they're actually taken out of there, put into transfer casks, and removed from the site. So let me just talk about partial site release. So partial site release is will be signed off in right now in 2035. So what is partial site release? Partial site release gives you unrestricted access to the site, which means that all these buildings in theory would be gone. The only thing that would be left there would be up on the hill, would be those spent fuel casks and whatever's in there. And those will be there until the Department of Energy at some point decides to take the responsibility to remove those. Because, just so everybody understands, Holtec has the responsibility, holding the license, they're responsible for that fuel and those casks. But the Department of Energy is actually the one that are responsible to take the fuel, store it, or reprocess it. In fact, we're so far behind the 8 ball because countries like France, Russia, the UK, they actively, right now, are reprocessing rods. Because there's a big market for depleted uranium and even for plutonium, which is used in the new MOX fuels, which are going to be used in these small modular reactors. So, and also, having worked in China for many years, which I did, China is actively now going to build a facility, as well as even Italy is going to build a facility. So the US is really way behind the 8 ball in reprocessing. Remember, not just Pilgrim, but Roe, Maine Yankee, Connecticut Yankee, Millstone, these all have spent fuel. We're not the only one that has spent fuel or solid waste. So let's talk about probably the most, say, emotional part of this thing is the water, right? So right now, the water is necessary until, because when they were doing the segmentation of the internals of the reactor, what they had to do is they had to put up beams, they had to put up all kinds of solid plates in order to be able to use the crane to remove all this stuff from outside internals of the reactor and get it into the spent fuel into these baskets. So the contractors that they have at the site now, other than Holtec, that's their primary function right now, is they're actually taking down all these beams, taking all these plates down, and which eventually will be removed. And based on the radioactive level, will be treated as waste, BAC waste. So the water right now is there, of course, for shielding. Now, natural evaporation, obviously, is causing some of this water, and I don't hold me to the exact amount, but there's been talk of 100,000 gallons have been evaporated out of that pool already. From the original 1.1 million gallons that we talked about originally. And also about the immersion heaters. That issue comes up quite a bit, about immersion heaters that are put in. So, Holtec's claim is that the immersion heaters are put in because they have people working in the building now. In order to keep the building at a 65-degree temperature for the workers that are in there, they need to put in these immersion heaters, which they state are only going to heat the pool to 100 to 125 degrees. So you're not boiling it, because as far as I know, 14.7, we boil water at 14.7 psi around us. We boil water at 212 degrees. So forced evaporation, I guess, you can use that term if you want. I personally don't see it as forced evaporation. Now, eventually, when these baskets are taken out, that water in the pool, except for heating, would really not, it'll be put down into the Taurus, I'm sure, at some point. Because the Taurus has the capacity to be able to store all of this water until there's some disposition of what they're going to do as far as discharging the water potentially. So, Holtec, as you know, is this NPDES permit. It stands for the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System Permit. It's been filed by Holtec. And basically DEP reviewed this voluminous document, by the way. If I remember, it's like 500 pages. And the DEP ruled and sent back to Holtec that they did not give it permission to discharge the water. So Holtec, for various reasons, based on, pollutants and contaminants, and also the fact of Massachusetts Ocean Sanctuaries Act. So, which Holtec, by the way, is disputed and appealed based on their interpretation of it, where they don't believe, and again, I'm not speaking for Holtec, nor am I speaking for the panel's position, but Holtec's belief is that this doesn't cover radionuclides, that pollutants and contaminants are not regulated by this, and that the NRC is the one that makes the final decision on radionuclides as far as the levels. So what happens is, so as it evaporates, it goes up, into the area. Of course, there's radiation monitors. All that water is filtered. So, but you can't filter out tritium. So tritium is the issue here. So tritium, goes up this stack, and it goes up into the atmosphere. So at this point, that's the issue, of debate as to, what is this tritium doing? Well, Holtec does have an organization that they've hired that actually continuously monitors this around the site and actually takes samples even of the water and takes samples of fish and whatever other marine life is in the ocean around the plant. That's what they've stated. And they also have stated that the water that's in the plant right now, it's been filtered, is below any levels. It's basically at 12 curies. Now, of course that supposedly is below any dose radiation that would be being released or discharged into the ocean if they were to discharge this water. If you look at this in the big picture, if Holtec is delaying this partial site release until 2035, and they have already appealed this, their intent is still, at some point, I don't know whether it's through litigation or what, to actually wind up discharging the water out into Cape Cod Bay. Otherwise, and again, I don't want to speak for Holtec, but that seems to be the direction that they're still going. They've done an evaluation of how many truckloads it would take 235 tankers to be able to take the remaining water and bring it to wherever the repository would be to the water, which I believe is someplace in Texas through Waste Services Corporation. So anyway, what about the license to terminate? So the license termination plan, which Holtec has to submit this coming year, is basically so at the time that they're going to actually terminate the license, they cannot terminate the license. Holtec has to hold that license as long as that fuel is in those casks and as long as those casks are on that site. So there will be a partial release based on the NRC reviewing all the documentation which is necessary for that, which is, they'll do a radiation monitoring of the site, they'll look at all kinds of documentation, look at the areas that have the highest possibility for spill based on the map that they've kept over the year, which is a requirement of where there's been spills. They'll evaluate all that. They have to go down to 3 to 4 feet below grade on foundations. That'll all be looked at. And that'll be basically for them to just be able to give partial site release. The actual license termination could go on for 60 years. It depends when they decide to take these casks away and do something with them, take the fuel away. But Holtec has to maintain security on all of that area. So right now the site is still under security, the whole site. You have to go through a portal to get on the site. But when that gets turned back to partial site release, the only place that will be under security, 24-hour monitoring, will be those casks that are up on the hill. Until, again, DOE or somebody takes possession of those, either an independent processing, either some company comes along and they can get it licensed and be able to take this away and reprocess this fuel, or whether the DOE finally comes up with a place to put all this.
So Mike, we're at 5 now. Do you want to take some questions, or what?
Sure.
Folks have questions.
Of course, Diane.
Yes.
I was just wondering, Holtec has been denied a permit to discharge into the bay according to the Ocean Sanctuaries Act. When Holtec purchased Pilgrim from Entergy, they signed a settlement agreement with the state of Massachusetts and said they would abide by all state laws and regulations. And the Ocean Sanctuaries Act said it's illegal to discharge into Cape Cod Bay. And Holtec is appealing that decision. They are already breaking a promise to the citizens that they would abide by state laws. Number one, so we really can't trust Holtec to follow the regulations. Number two, the delay in the water, there's over 800,000 gallons in, and Holtec rep David Noyes said in the last year they evaporated 200,000 gallons. So if you do the math, if they're evaporating 200,000 gallons, that water's going to be gone in a few years. It's not going to take 8 years. The reason Holtec has put the 8 years in because they lost money in the stock market, and the decommissioning trust fund is the people's ratepayer fund. Holtec bought Pilgrim for $1,000 and got a $1.2 billion decommissioning trust fund, which was our money to have that safely decommissioned. But they get to keep any profit that they haven't used and put it in their pocket. So that's the thing that I think people in Plymouth should be aware of too. And third, the nuclear waste on that hill on the pad there, each can, the 62 cans that hold the spent fuel rods, each can holds half the cesium that was released at Chernobyl. And if you drive by that site, you can see those cans. There are vents on the top that emit gamma radiation. They're not measuring for that. It's getting out into our communities. And you can drive right up there. And if I had a good arm, I could hit a baseball on those vents because they leave the gates open. It says, drive by that. The gates are open and it says, deadly force used. But guess where the signs are? On the other side of the gate. Who thinks this is good security? All right? It's a very serious situation here in Plymouth because you have a nuclear waste dump down the street. It's emitting radiation. It's in Holtec's substandard canisters. Okay, nobody's buying these anymore. They're substandard. They're a half-inch steel. You know, if you have a Yeti cup, it's just a quarter of an inch thicker than that. And it holds the most dangerous substance known to humankind. So I wish we could all work together as a community to do the right thing. Holtec is there to make money. That's it. They don't care about our safety. They don't care about this community. They don't care about the truth. And so I really recommend that people in the town of Plymouth come to the Nuclear Decommissioning Citizens Advisory Panel and speak up to protect our community, to protect Cape Cod Bay. This is one of the prettiest towns I've ever seen. Driving out here, I was like, this is so stunning. But we need to protect it from Holtec and their profit, greedy business.
Our own fishermen can't even release anything in the water. How can this be happening?
Excuse me, what you said? I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you just said.
Our own fishermen, our oyster community,
Yes.
the oystermen, our boaters, our recreational boaters, you can't even dump a little bit of oil in the bay. And look at what they're doing.
The radioactive tritium and other materials that they aren't measuring are being dumped into our bay
Well,
and into our community.
in fairness,
They biodegrade, they bioaccumulate into this environment. The Massachusetts Medical Association has written a statement saying Holtec needs to stop the evaporation. The Greater Boston Physicians for Social Responsibility have said Holtec has to stop the evaporation. Our elected officials have said that too. And Holtec is a private corporation that is thumbing their noses to the public health and safety, our environment, and the blue economy. Thank you, Mike, for letting me speak.
No. I encourage people to come to the meetings. I really do, because I think it's a forum for people to stand up and speak. With respect to everyone, and that's the important thing. Mm-hmm. The important thing is to make sure that everybody's entitled to speak. Mm-hmm. Basically, that's a privilege that's given by the panel. Okay, but I think it's a matter of respecting everyone still, and that's I think the part that sometimes gets crossed. That line gets crossed.
I think Garrett had a question, and then this.
Sure.
Are the insect structures still there for the cooling water, the screen
Yes.
houses and those screens still in place?
The screens, the traveling water screens and the screen wash pumps, right, the structure is still there. But that eventually will be removed also. But that is still there. And the two outfall and infall for the condenser and stuff for cooling, that's gonna stay, that won't be removed.
Are they keeping it in place for Is it still functional at all, or no?
No.
Is it put off on?
No, because right now the condensers are gone and everything. The only thing that's really, that would be used for is eventually, if they do whatever they decide to, how disposition and discharge the water, it would be through that area, of course. But there's no use right now of circulating. Before they were 310,000 gallons a minute, when they were running the condensers in the plant. They're not anymore.
You mentioned too that the biological sampling, they used to do, I used to do it. It was fish tissue and it's like seaweed, especially like Irish moss, and we did sample like crow hogs. So those are the things we were sampling for, see if there was any contamination.
And again, I'm being told that they have a company that's doing that, But here's the thing too, and you were aware of this too. We had a doctor recently come, Dr. Boosler from Woods Hole, and Dr. Rapina from Woods Hole. And one of them, and Dr. Boosler he's basically an oceanographer, but a biologist, but he's an expert in radiology, okay? And he had an interview without its Songs. Songs is out on San Onofre. It's a nuclear plant that was shut down out there. And he, had an interview with the people out there and discussing everything. And in fairness to Holtec, he said that there's little or no effect to the surfing community. Now he had, as far as Pilgrim though, he had previously raised the flag that Pilgrim is a real big problem for discharging any kind of tritiated water. However, in his presentation recently, in fairness, he really tempered that a lot. He basically showed pictures of a fish where it doesn't really bioaccumulate into the tissue because it's it doesn't tritium does not bioaccumulate into a tissue, into like fat. It basically goes to water. So he even said at the point, and I don't want to speak for him, but this is the way I interpret it, and I have his presentation, which I'm sure is public domain, is that he showed a picture of where tritium only lasts, even though the fish drinks the water and it goes through them, that it only is in there for a few days at most. Let me just finish. Now, that's the way I interpreted it. And I looked at his presentation, I re-looked at it and reviewed it again, and you certainly can view it yourself. And again, I'm not saying that he's raising his hand saying, oh, the only alternative is to discharge the water. He's not saying discharge the water. But what he's basically, I think, is tempering his position, at least my opinion, and it's my opinion, that he's totally tempered his position of what he originally had about the tritiated water being discharged.
Right, so let's have one more question, because I think it was...
My question was on the air. You said that Holtec has air monitors.
They do.
Who gets the results of those? Like where?
The
how can the public find out what is in the air? I live right outside the plant.
So what they have to do is they have to monitor it. They monitor it daily. They have to report it to the NRC. They have Zoom meetings with the NRC weekly to go over what they've what the monitoring. Because not only do they monitor the space, of course, that the workers are in, because they have to, because you got people in potentially radiation areas, but they also, anything going up the stack, they have radiation monitors.
But I thought they had like a year to report if there's an issue or something.
Total final, a final report, but they still talk with the NRC on a weekly basis about any results that would be adverse to what they're seeing.
And where can we get that info, that weekly report?
I don't know if that is put out. I do not believe that's put out on the.
The public can't figure it out.
Yeah, once a year. That's what I thought.
But I think it's only once a year the actual report is published. But I know that they do meet with them. They do have a Zoom meeting with them on a weekly basis.
But if I'm breathing that bad air for a year, I'm not going to know for a year. Is my point.
Well,
that's large.
The
That's
NRC to let us know if there's an urgency.
I would hope so.
Well, that's another thing too. The NRC doesn't have an inspector there every single day,
right?
But they do have inspectors that come in there on a regular basis to review anything. And of course, it's incumbent upon Holtec, if they do see any issue, they have to report it. They have to log it. And they would have to then contact the NRC, the local NRC, inspector.
It's too bad there wasn't an independent third party, because given Holtec's track record, I don't really trust them to be reporting against themselves, you know?
Yeah. So I'm just reading on the website. So Mary Gatzlick saying the information is available through the public information at the NRC. It is the annual REMP report. It's a weekly report. And if there's a violation, the NRC is notified immediately.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we just said.
Just being mindful, it is 1:15, and would love to have people break this down and have individual discussions. So, Mike, thank you very much.
Look, I have, just so you know, right, I have a vest. I live right on the ocean right over here, so it isn't like I'm not part of this thing too, so.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
So what you think?
Oh, he's already.
Yes, yes, I do that.
Yeah.